Welcome to my adventures. Not atypical for what happens in my life. So it's all good. So today, my name is Christi Kapp, and I listed some of the things that I do on here and that I've done. They kind of get smaller when I've stopped doing them as you go along. But really, I kind of lead my life by not who I am or what I do, but what is my mission. And my mission is to connect people, ideas, and things in order to create stuff. So the stuff could be a company, the stuff could be code, the stuff could be a project team. Doesn't really matter what I'm creating as long as I'm creating. Then I'm happy. So why did you come in here? Does anybody even know what Polymath is? Rich knows. Anybody else? It's a $5 word for sure. So something probably got you curious. Some of you are my friends, so thank you very much for coming. This is really not about math. Polymath has nothing to do with math, but this is going to be about programming of sorts. If you think about programming yourself and programming your own biological computer. So you might be here if you're successful, so you're good at your job, you do a great job at work, but it always feels like there's something missing. You know, no matter what you try, no matter what you do, there's something not quite right. And let's say that someone walks up to you and says, "What do you do?" And you kind of stumble around because you really might not have one answer, right? Or you're a perpetual student. You keep going back to school because you're just completely curious about how something else might be. So you might start your life as an engineer. You might go back, do business. You might get sick of that, be a lawyer. That's a polymath. And you can't figure out what's most interesting. So you could be here because of that, or you could be here because you just wanted to sit in this room because it's the web track. But anyway, what will I talk about today? I'm going to talk about what got me interested in polymaths in the first place, kind of tell you what they are. It is a way of being. It's a way of thinking. There are a lot of other ways of being and thinking that are equally as valid as that of a polymath, and actually our world needs all of them. Now, the workplace in specific has some implications to polymaths that make you maybe be kind of depressed and unhappy if you can't kind of step out of it and know what's going on around you. Once you understand that, you can be happy even though you're in that environment. So I'll give some tools and tips and techniques to help you really design your life so that you can function as a polymath in the world. So I'm going to kind of tell you how I got to this point, right? So I have been in the technology industry since 1984, or maybe before that. My first computer was a ZX Sinclair 80. I put it together with a soldering iron. I've lived through evolution in software development, many different methodologies, anything from just waterfall, spiral, figuring it out, making it up. But in 2012, since I'm a consultant, I get the opportunity to do a lot of different things. So I decided that I wanted to do a data analysis role. And so I kind of dug through my resume, having a long experience. I kind of picked out the things that looked like maybe I could do data analysis. So then I did it. I was actually a Teradata data analyst, had never touched Teradata before, and it was really fun. So I was actually doing the analysis for the Disney Magic Band. Since I have to use the word magic in my talk, I was working on the Magic Band project, doing the analysis of the experience. So watching the guest experience, see how people went through the park, what did they do, that kind of stuff. So you get to the end of this thing, and all of a sudden it hit me like a lightning bolt. I said, I've never been a data analyst. How did I get this job, right? What happened? I'm like, okay, that was kind of weird. 2 years of work, and I really hadn't ever done it before that. But I thought I had. That was really weird. So then I'll go to art, right? So again, my mother's an artist. My father sells art. One of my brothers is an architect and game designer. The other one does miniature design. So kind of everybody in my family is an artist. I never did it when I was a kid because I was jealous of my brother and he would do all the drawing and I just kind of watched. I didn't do it. I didn't want to be the one to take away his thunder because that was clearly his thing and not my thing because I was doing music. So about 4 years ago, all of a sudden stuff starts popping out of me. Art, where'd that come from? Actually started with leather, hand tooling leather, moved into sculpting leather because I got sick of flat leather. Then I learned to weld, and I started creating big sculptures. Then I always thought I couldn't do any 2D art, and all of a sudden, boom, I did a thing that was a sculpture, but it was on a box, and I had to decorate it, and lo and behold, I could paint. Where'd that come from? And then recently, I started drawing. So my mother said, what the heck happened to you? Where did this come from? You're well over 50. How can you just suddenly start to paint and draw and all that? And I'm like, heck if I know, I just guess it was always in there. So we'll kind of explain where it came from in a little bit. Because that all those experiences got me thinking about who am I? Who am I? Anyway, this doesn't make sense. So I finally, I got real frustrated because throughout my career, most of it's been as a business analyst, and I would go to a job interview and they'd say something like, I would like you to design this screen and tell me how the controls work on this screen and document that. I'm like, that sounds really boring. I can be a business analyst, but that's not really who I am. And then I have another job interview, project management. I can answer all the questions. I can do the job. And they're like, well, we want you to get certified as a project manager. To me, I thought they were putting me in jail. I'm like, no, if I get certified, you're going to think that's who I am. I don't want you to think that's who I am because I'm all of these things. I couldn't explain it. So finally last fall, I figured out there's actually a word for this thing, what I am. It's called a polymath. If you go back in history, before we had a lot of technology to help us, if you look at the names of the people that created the world and the way we do things today, go back way back to ancient Egypt, you had people that were multiple things. There were politicians, there were physicians, there were architects, all kind of design things, as well as communicators. You've got Pythagoras, you've got Leonardo da Vinci is probably the most famous example of a polymath. That guy could do everything, and he did. Polymaths are doers. They're not just thinker-abouters, they're doers. So it never ends. So this thing here, I actually drew this thing here for a reason. Because being an artist, you think about the world and you see the world a little bit different. So I was lying in bed one night and just sort of got dozy, and there was a storm coming. It was like an electrical storm, and all of a sudden I literally saw this thing, like a stream of electricity connecting all of us together, like electricity with things coming out of it. And right at that moment, like 3 complete sculpture designs popped out. I had sat up in bed, turned on the light, drew them. I said, wow, what was that, right? So we're actually all connected, and I feel like very fortunate to have seen it. Maybe I imagined it, but it was amazing. It was beautiful. So, all right. So then I started thinking, I'm just a little different than some other people. Well, why am I different? So I started thinking about how do people work. This was one of my first attempts to try and draw it and make sense of it because I couldn't write about it. It didn't work. To me, it was a picture. So I started drawing like, these little things that are in your brain with dendrites and synapses and all that stuff. And to me, it's like 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional maybe. And I started thinking, well, there's different people. If you look on TV, you see the people that are like the Jeopardy people. They memorize a whole bunch of stuff, and actually they know it pretty well, right? But they know a whole lot of things because there's a lot of categories in that show. I'm like, well, that's really not what I am. I'm not like that at all. I'm different. So I do know a lot of things. I can do a lot of things. The other thing that happens is I connect the things. So I'll connect a concept. To me, design is design, whether it is a painting, a sculpture, software, planning a backlog. To me, it's identical. There's literally no difference in effort, no difference in thought for me, because somewhere in my head it connected all those concepts together. And that's what polymaths do. So a monomath is different. Monomaths know a lot about one thing. All right, so a couple days ago, I finally think I drew this, so it might make sense. It makes sense to me. Let's see if it makes sense to you. So think of this. Everybody's done object-oriented programming, I hope. That's in here of some sort. So everybody has data stored in their heads or stored in their person somewhere. And then some people know a lot, so I drew it deep. So Polymath knows a lot. There's a lot of data backing up what they know somewhere in you. Someone who's a scanner, that Jeopardy person, they know a lot, but it doesn't go all that deep, right? So they don't have a depth of knowledge about anything. They know enough about something to answer intelligent questions and go up to a physicist and have a good conversation, but they can't talk about the latest theory. It's not going to work, right? A polymath can do that in certain areas. So polymaths have something going on that's a little bit different than what scanners do. I also threw in something, found some things about savants, right? So how the heck does savants work? You have people that have literally never learned how to do something like play a piano. Something happens to them, and the next day they can play a piano. Why is that, right? So it's actually, if you read about it in some of the neurology magazines, once you get past all their words, which are kind of hard to read, you get key nuggets out of it, which is it's a very deep memory. So, and it operates almost like a habit, right? So that was all interesting. So let's just go through each one in turn. Polymath, this is honestly the world of development these days. Everybody is very highly specialized. In the previous presentation, the speaker was asking, what discipline are you in? And there wasn't an assumption that you're in multiple. There's an assumption that you're in one. You might have, Java skills, or you might have Angular skills, or you might have, I don't know, JavaScript or SQL or something, but you might not have all those skills. So probably most people, especially if they're certified in these areas, they're deep with that knowledge, and they're specialists. You can find a job anywhere you want, and as long as you're doing what you know how to do and you love it, you're going to be happy. It's going to match. It's going to match who you are and how you think, because that's the way your brain is wired. Okay, scanners are different. They have a different circuitry works in their head. So scanners are people that like to explore everything, try out a lot of different careers. They refuse to choose. They don't want to do it. They think if they do it, they'll be in prison. It will limit who they are. They'll be miserable. And they'll be frustrated because they just want to go learn something else and they're stuck in some job that just doesn't fit them. I ran across some books in these areas. One's called, and there's a TED Talk by Emily Wapner, which is pretty good. It talks about being a multi-potentialite, which is kind of what that says is I really like to learn. I have the potential to learn and do anything. So let me go figure out how to do that. So her book talks people through, how do you limit that so that you actually do end up making enough money to live. Found another book called The Renaissance Soul, and that one just appealed to me, and I was so excited when I found that book because I actually also own and operate a bed and breakfast, and this woman was an innkeeper. So I'm like, wow, that's great. I am going to find her on LinkedIn. I'm going to talk to her because clearly she made the connection between being friendly to a lot of people and having them in your house and learning from them, and then writing a book and doing that. That's awesome. Went to LinkedIn, found her. She had died. I was sad. I was like, oh my goodness. Well, now what do I do? But her website remains. And there is one of the people that she coached still maintains the website and sells the coaching materials. So I get to listen to her voice, even though she had died, because she made recordings of her coaching. And so that was kind of awesome to find. Savants is different again. So you have a lot of deep memory. Savants, you can trigger them with anything, and then they'll just do whatever their gift is. There's a guy that can fly over a city in a helicopter and literally sit down and draw that. There are people who may have sat next to their grandmother playing piano when they were a kid. Something happened to their head later. They wake up one day, they can play piano. So you see traumatic brain injuries a lot of times will bring out one of these skills. This is kind of why I think I just started to draw, right, where that came from. Same thing with the data analysis. My first marriage, I was married to a data architect. Do you think we talked about it? We did. It went in. It went into my brain. I learned it. I didn't even know I learned it. And I learned it well enough to go do it and make money at it. So That's probably the same kind of mechanism where the savant gets the data to be able to do their stuff. So polymath to me is a little bit different. Again, I'm drawing these pictures, and this is kind of how I think my circuitry works. I have data. Some of it's deep. It's not deep in all areas. And I also have another thing that I do, which is there's an experiment where they put a rat in a maze and they measure his brain activity. And so the first 3 times that the rat goes through the maze, there's a whole lot of activity because he's thinking and processing and trying to figure out, where the heck am I going? About 4 times then, the rat's brain activity drops to nothing. The rat still goes through the maze and gets to the cheese. Why is that? Well, the rat got programmed, right? So through that series of learning steps, the rats put that information into, I'm calling it a subroutine. I don't know what else to call it. It's an automated thing that rat could do that he can invoke and go there. It's the same thing like you drive to work and you don't know how you got there, right? It's a habit. There's a book by Michael Duguid called The Power of Habit, and he talks about a guy who literally lost a chunk of his brain, couldn't do anything, and then it turned out he could still take a walk around the block even though he couldn't communicate because he had habits, and so his habits kind of got loose. And he was just operating and functioning just purely by habit. And later on, his brain came back. The thinking part of his brain came back. So that was kind of amazing. So I went on monster.com and said, let's see, how many jobs can I find that say polymath? Like, first of all, no one knows the word. It wouldn't be there. But it was kind of funny that I found one result, right? And it was someone who does experience conversion rate optimization specialist. Right? Someone who puts data together. Think about data scientists. They probably could be polymaths. They're going to connect dots. All right, so everybody probably knows what a polymath is by now. So let's talk about the implications of them in tech. All right, so let's say that you're a multi-skilled person, aka polymath. Here's one. This is a Batty Bratty. She's a UX designer, Java. She likes goth stuff. She's a cheerleader. She can do SQL too. She wants to do all those things at work because they're all kind of fun. But she goes to the recruiter. Recruiter says, but, the requisition says we need 3 to 5 years of UX experience. You just seem unfocused. You can't make up your mind what you want to do. So you're really not right for this role. I want a deep specialist in UX design, and that is all I want. I don't want you to have any other skills. I don't want you to think. I want you to be a task worker. So someone who is a monomath recruiting specialist isn't going to see what a polymath is or could do. They can't. So a polymath can understand a monomath, but a monomath can't always understand what a polymath is capable of doing. So we get pigeonholed. All right, let's say you put 2 monomaths in a room, and they try to have a conversation about work, right? I don't know, maybe a procurement specialist or something and a performance engineer. Do you think they have a real good conversation about work? Not really. So in the olden days, in the beginning of software development, there was a polymath that used to get stuck in the middle of that called a business analyst. We were translators. We would translate from the world of whatever the business said, because we could understand all of those things, and we would translate it into the other kind of language so that the technical people, whether they were database or screens or whatever, so that they could understand each other. So what's a popular model for software development these days? It's almost like we've built a factory, right? So you've taken work developing software. All you're doing is building a small application. You take that work and you break it down into 1 million little jobs. And then you have their monomaths, so they don't talk to each other. So you have to build up a structure to manage them. And then you have to build a structure on top of that so that they can communicate with each other. And then you build up another structure on top of that so they can talk with whoever is getting those services. There's not much room for a polymath in this structure. I mean, they're there. Some of the old ones like us are still there with either BAs or something. UX designers still can have that freedom to some extent, but it doesn't quite work great for your skill set. That's all I'm saying. Works great in a lot of cases for developing the product, but for the polymath, they're feeling kind of unfulfilled, just baked into this, I don't know what you would like, you're a cog, right? Polymaths don't like being cogs. Agile teams are better, real agile teams. If you go back to the beginning, and I started doing extreme programming back in the late 80s in New York, and the thing about our teams were we were all multi-skilled, every last one of us on the team. So we didn't call it Agile then, but it was Agile. And so we had these people that, if you look back in the literature, you'll find these generalizing specialists. They're key to an Agile team. They're that sweet spot between people who know a lot about something narrow and the generalists that know a little about the wide range. So they sit in between the scanners and the monomath, right? Those are the polymaths. They connect everybody. All right, so wait, what do? You're stuck in a world where you are locked into one role. I mean, it's very hard to find a job unless you're a CEO really fulfilling your skills. That's why I'm an entrepreneur and I have 3 other businesses, because I get fed outside of work of what I need. So the question is, who will you be? All right, I'm going to pick on Martin in the front room, and I'm going to say, Martin, it's been a while since I saw you. What have you been doing?
Changed jobs.
Yes. Yeah. What do you do?
I'm a developer advocate.
That's awesome. He's a developer advocate for Google. But did you notice I'm sort of picking on, not you, I'm picking on what we're all habitually oriented to. We have been trained to say, who pays my paycheck? Who pays my paycheck? That's what he just answered. Every one of you would have answered that question the exact same way, because we're programmed. How have you been? What are you doing? Well, I'm working at XYZ, and this is my role, and this is what I do. Okay, fine. That's great. If you're a polymath and you have a lot of skills and you have a lot of interests, I'm going to encourage you to start thinking about things just a little bit differently. So if you think about what is the engine that drives your life, not your money, what drives your life, right? Here's the job. Let's put the job in the middle. It's green. It gives you money. That's good. So the assumption is the job is the center of your universe. Let's draw a circle around that. What is your passions? And this has a typo. It should actually have an S on it, because when you're a polymath, you have multiple passions. The trick is to pick the right ones that all go together and go with your job, right? And then that all drives your life. It creates your life. So you're like the active designer of your life. But here, look here where the focus is. My identity is my job. That's not what you want. Switch it around. Say, my identity is my passion. Now I'm going to pick a job that lets me pursue, and it feeds my passion. The money I get enables me to do my passion. So really, Martin has a different passion. He loves to connect with people. Therefore, a developer advocate job is awesome. He's connecting people to technology and telling them what to do. So he's actually following his passion. He's got a blend, I think, of joining the money with the passion. So not everybody's so lucky. Some people have other passions outside of what they're doing to make money. It's just be mindful of where your passions are and be mindful of whether they align with your job or not. And believe it or not, you can start switching your roles around a little bit in your next job to get you closer to something that will give you the funds to do your passion and let you be free. I guarantee you'll be a whole lot happier when you take your identity away from a job. I'll tell you a little story. I owned a company called TechnoQuest that was a Microsoft training company. I owned it from 1992. We sold it in 1999 to another company. I had it with my ex-husband. 2000, the acquirers ran it into the ground, and we got pushed out the door. That's kind of what happens sometimes. And I didn't realize it, but my husband put his identity in that company. And when we sold the company and he was pushed out the door, he fell, he crumbled. That was it. That was it for him. He did not know that within his own self, he had the capability and the power to just go do that again. At least I got the message. We didn't end up staying married. It was sad, but now I'm married to a polymath. It's awesome. Yeah, we're terrible. All right, pick a few focal points here. This is the next step in getting yourself sane about being a polymath. So pick a few, and I don't say pick one. It's like not what do you want to be when you grow up, but what is it that you're really excited about, and make sure that they fit your core values. To be successful, you really need to not pick 100. You need to pick more than one, but not more than 10. Really 3 to 5. So it's choose your baggage carefully. Choose which passions you're going to carry with you and keep hold of. This little thing here is called the lacewing larva. You ever heard of a lacewing? It's a beneficial insect in your garden. One of my things I like is gardening. I saw one of these things one day. It was crazy. What they do is they pack stuff all over themselves to hide from ants, which will eat them, because they want to go in and eat aphids. Ants like aphids because the aphids make honey. These things want to eat the aphids, so to get away from the ants, it's like wolf in sheep's clothing. So pick your baggage carefully to make sure you can go where you want to go. All right, one more thing in the techniques, and this is a new one. So increase your efficiency. Focus on habit creation. People talk about bad habits all the time, right? You're an alcoholic, or you smoke too much pot, or whatever it is you do. So they talk about how do you break bad habits. What people don't talk about much is how do you create good habits, and I'm going to call habits subroutines. How do you create things that you can reuse, that you can take from one discipline to another, and do it without thinking? Be like that rat in the maze that's already trained. He's invoking a subroutine to do something. So build those. So there's processes that you can go through to train yourself and then automatically respond. So sadly, one of the things that is happening these days is there's a very, very effective way of creating autoresponders, and that's called a meme. So when you combine an image with a funny thing, it will go into your brain and it will stick there, and the next thing you know, you're auto-responding something you don't even believe, because it's your automatic part of your brain that's actually answering that. So think about it. Think about what skill can you reuse. I was looking at the previous presentation, and he had a lot of graphs up there. He was showing performance of JavaScript with graphs, and I was like, you know, that's interesting. I have that skill to read that graph without interpreting it because I'm an engineer, because I've been trained to read graphs. So I got another one. I got an autoresponder for easily understanding any piece of data that you stick in front of me if it's in a well-presented graph. I don't think about it. I don't have to analyze it. It's just see, and the answer pops out. So you can deliberately create habits that you can reuse, and then it's kind of like when, some trigger, right? With humans, we have a lot of indexes, and we have a lot of things that can trigger it. So it could be smells, any sense, right? Smell, sound, a question, a taste, a touch, a situation. Any of those things act as indexes and pop out automatic responses, which is interesting. So then your autoresponder habit routine kicks in. I do some other team building training, and they talk a lot about automatic responses when you're learning to work better as a team and learning to stop the automatic reaction and more planfully respond instead of react. That's all about this habit loop. We are hardwired. It's part of our brain. It's circuitry. We can't get rid of it, but it is there and it exists. And when you leverage it to your advantage, you do way better than letting it control you some other way. So that's kind of as far as I've gotten with this. If you have some question about whether or not you're a polymath, I do have a quiz that's online, and it's based on that innkeeper's work, Margaret Lobenstein. It's a little different than hers. And if you're still curious, here's some other steps you can do to kind of develop, find out what flavor you are, and then there's things that you can do to make yourself more productive and actually happier in your own skin. None of it's psychology. This is all just understanding your brain circuitry, how you work, and how you respond to different environments. Then I have coaching sessions too. So this is my contact information. My website, christikapp.com. You'll see art first. You won't see tech. I kind of hid my resume. I finally got sick of getting calls about being a business analyst. Like, don't even call me. I don't care. It's going to be who I am. That's my email. And that's it. Thank you.